Afternoon. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to an exclusive YouTube Live with our friend Terry Minix from Embassy RV. Terry, thank you for joining us today. This is going to be a big show, folks. Terry, where are you located? And please give us
In
a weather report.
cold Elkhart, Indiana, we were 6 degrees this morning, and Scott said, "You going to put your embassy shirt on?" I said, "No, I'm going to be warm. I'm wearing a sweatshirt." We're probably 13 degrees right now.
Well, it warmed up to 6. Well, it's 78 here in Florida, and wherever you're watching from, let us know. We always enjoy knowing where the audience is coming in from. So this is a Embassy RV sponsored video live today, and it's going to be posted afterwards. Embassy's been doing some really creative things for many, many years, and that's why I just love them being part of their program, being a partner of theirs. And today, they're kind of expanding their RV services a third time. They have their Class B van builds on all three chassis. You're familiar with that. Project Black Bear, we announced in October here on Go Small Live Large, and that was building out a Class C using crowdsourced ideas to really build a really cool rig. Maybe Terry can give us an update on that at the end of the program, which will go for about an hour. But today it's all about Project Bear Cub. And if you saw the thumbnail, you kind of got a little teaser for what this might look like. Now, this looks like a pretty standard van, Terry. I'm not saying there's anything really wrong with this thing, but maybe just give us a little shot in the arm. Let me move this one slide forward, and you can tell us why.
Well, what we thought we'd do is reach out and say, okay, we know there's some issues out there with some of the vehicles and stuff. So we reached out, and this customer, Nancy, reached back, and we decided to take on the project, a little bit off of photos, not really knowing what we were even getting into, but we knew we could help. So once we got into it, you're looking at what the end result was after 2 days of tearing things out that, at first I thought I could save some things, and I'm saving some of the appliances, but you see where we had to go with this thing. And this was a finished vehicle that Scott and I will show you a little later what it looked like.
So the idea here is, in my mind, is if you've bought an RV, a used van, and Terry, this is just vans only. We're not doing trailers or big Class A motorhomes or palaces on
Correct.
wheels. These are vans, right? Yeah.
Correct.
So the idea here, I'm using the word remodel. So if you've bought a used RV van that's a couple years old, maybe you want to update some RV systems, maybe you want to update the floor plan. Maybe it's got some mold and mildew and decay issues because it's made of wood, and you want to do something about it, but aren't sure where to turn. I think this is a service that Embassy is offering now, and it's really kind of interesting. And we're going to use some kind of horror stories here today because as Terry dug into this van, it became apparent that whether it's a DIY or even a commercially built rig, there could be some problems that are behind the walls and under the floors and the cabinets you never even really see. And it's like rehabbing a home. You walk through on the open house and it looks beautiful, but you start peering around the corners and you're like, this thing is just held together by some baling wire, which is not great. So we've got a number of topics to cover, about 7 or 8, I think, in total. We're going to go for an hour. I'm just going to have Terry kind of walk through some of this as we go through. So the first topic is kind of the sit and the sleep, but we definitely want to answer some of your questions. Terry, we've got a number of fans in the house. Let me just kind of show a few of these folks on the channels. We've got Travel Dreamer in the house. We've got John in the house. Here's Pennsylvania. Everybody's in winter weather pretty much. Here's Mr. Forrester. Still waiting in Wisconsin. I guess he's got here's Washington State. Here's Sherry. Sherry, thanks for your help on the Facebook. I know, right? Hi, Sherry. Thanks for the Facebook Embassy Owners Wannabe group. Really appreciate all you do there. Terry, give me just a little bit of a background on what kind of. So let's bring the image up on the screen here. So if we're talking, and these are the words I use: sit and sleep. So how many people will your van seated, belted? Hopefully, and then how many would sleep? Sometimes that's a very different number altogether. And I'll bring up this next image here. And if people want to try to, either accommodate more people or in some cases fewer people because they want a different floor plan. How are you kind of tackling that with the client? Here's an example here you can talk to.
Well, the first thing you need to do when you talk seatbelts, which, everybody wants seatbelts, and you notice we haven't done it up to this point because we spent $7,000 on a body in white, which is an empty Ford Transit chassis that we're going to destroy and make sure our seatbelts do what FMVSS says they have to do. So you have to test it. This is a bus seat that's mounted to bolts you see in the floor there that I will guarantee, because there was little washers down below the floor for holding that in, which aren't compliant. I don't believe this was ever pull tested. They just threw a bus seat in. So it's a perfect example of, you had seat belts here, but hopefully you never have to use them.
Because they probably wouldn't function very well.
It may not work out too well.
Yeah, right. You're belted in, but you're going through the windshield in your seat, which is probably not awesome. Yeah. And we're going to talk about the living room in a little bit. But again, Terry, if somebody's kind of coming to you and they want to either accommodate more people or maybe remove some seating, there's some vans that have 4 like captain's chairs. Are you able to accommodate floor plan changes, assuming that's what the customer wants? What's kind of your thinking through and dialogue with a client on something like that?
What our goal was with this project was to dig into these kind of vehicles that really need a ton of help. To do little odd and end jobs isn't going to be able to be done. We may do that in the future, but there are companies out there we will refer you to that we know and do a good job for that. So part of, if we don't do it, we're going to maybe try to help you find somebody that can, and they're reputable and they'll do a good job. But the goal here is to help educate and help steer in the right direction, the customers, to hopefully help them make good decisions and be comfortable with their choices and what happens after somebody does work on their vehicle.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the takeaway from this is a little bit of education here. So whether you have an existing van from that's been built, we can assume that those are compliant in many ways of Thor, Embassy, Winnebago, but the DIY folks and some of the smaller vans, Terry, if they're looking for buying a used one or they've got a little bit of a dated one, these are kind of the things to look for. Is this compliant? Has this been crash tested? You can ask those questions before you buy it. So if you wanted to install bus seats as part of increasing the floor plan at Embassy RV, you probably would have to say no to that because it would require crash testing. So that'd be an example of what Terry would put his foot down on. But then there's some other things you're like, hey, we can do a whole bunch of really cool things, right?
If they would have put the bus seat in and not put seat belts in it, it's compliant. The minute you put seat belts to it, somebody better crash test it.
Yeah, which kind of takes care of your used van.
And it's technically not a crash test; it's a pull test. A machine comes in and hooks chains up to the seat belts, and it pulls X amount of weight based on the math of what they say needs to be done for that seat. So it's a seat and the belt times X. And it has to hold it for 20 seconds without tearing the belt and without canopering the floor. You can pull the floor up a foot as long as you don't pierce it, and you've passed the test. If you break at 19 seconds, you failed. If you tear the floor at 19 seconds, you failed. It has to hold 20 seconds because they determine that's the period of time an accident would take to happen.
Stop moving. Interesting. Always learn here. Something on the YouTube Lives with Terry from Embassy RV. Give Terry a thumb up for joining us on a Friday afternoon. And if your temperature is below 50 degrees, definitely give us a thumb up. And if it's above 50, that deserves a thumb up too. Here we got Linda from very chilly Cincinnati. Love Cincinnati. Streamwood's in the house. Hey, Rich. Good to see you. This is a little slightly off topic, but we do want to have some of these. I'm guessing Travel Dreamer has a Embassy on order. Are you seeing a reduction in delivery times? A chassis, I think what they're referring to specifically.
We expect the chassis deliveries from Ford and the different companies to straighten up here, probably in the first half of this year for sure. I think we'll see some movement in that in the next month or so at the very most. We'll at least see destinations of chassis and stuff starting to be revealed from the big companies, So this point we're in right now is going to last a whole lot longer. I think it will straighten up, and those are all the signals Ford is giving to us that, you know, they're boosting their production to get this all straightened out, and the parts issues are being straightened out and starting to get close to being behind them where we can get back to normal.
Yeah, we're seeing some mitigation on some of these shortages kind of across the board. Although weirdly, here at our West Palm Beach area Costco, toilet tissue is still a hot commodity, limiting and always out. Mr. I'm not sure how to say it. Terry is boss man. Look at that, Terry. That's so great.
I'll tell you, Scott, there's even a shortage of Amish cracked donuts right now. The stuff they make, the powdered donuts that I bring in for folks when they visit, is in short demand right now.
That's so funny. That is great. So let's talk about the living room, the great room, the space you'll spend a lot of time in your van. I'm calling it a living room. We just kind of saw this picture. But Terry, my question for you is, if the client either wants to maybe put in a permanent table, or they want to remove it and do a lagoon table, again, kind of changing up the great room, what would you expect a customer to bring to you to really have a thorough discussion about that? Maybe in this case, they want bus seats, but they want them facing the patio door so they can look at the view with a lagoon table in front of that. Which would be kind of an embassy style, right? So what kind of things are you thinking through and helping a customer think about in terms of the living room, the great room?
Well, anytime you're talking furniture and you change the direction of it or change the location of it or do anything to it, if it's from a reputable company that has done their pull testing, I couldn't change the furniture. I would be doing a misservice to the customer to move something that's been tested. In the case that we're doing with this vehicle, that furniture is coming out and it's not going back in. That's okay. But to move that seat, absolutely not. I couldn't touch it. The minute I touch it, I assume the liability.
Yeah. And those are just things to think about really, really carefully, yes. Right?
Yes.
So again, we like to talk about why do you want an RV, then how does an RV system enable that so you get what you want, and floor plan is so critical to that. So kind of get some of this out of the way right from the purchase start, right? Deborah's saying this is a great way to help people utilize resources while waiting for chassis. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right?
Yes.
Terry's pretty excited about this. Let me show the next picture. This is the Galley. This is not what you'd find in any van, I'm pretty sure. But in this customer's case, the Galley there is on your left with the, oops, did not come through? Oh, I got to do this way.
There we go.
It's been a long week. There we go. And with the paper towel holder. So maybe, Terry, just kind of walk us through a little bit about, I would think a Galley would be something somebody would want to remodel pretty readily. So again, thinking of a freshwater system, wastewater system. We're going to show you some pictures here in a minute. But again, thinking through Galley, what words of wisdom do you have here to look for and educate us on?
Actually, the faucet and the sink were probably two of the better parts of this. I'm not sure it worked. I know the drain system didn't work. I don't think the water part of it worked well, but it might have. It's an 1.5 inch butcher block cutting board countertop, which was so heavy. And just for the record, this whole vehicle only had 200 pounds left over in it for the GVWR. So when you filled up the water and stuff, you were in trouble already because it was also heavy. But in this one's case, again, just because of the sheer weight of everything, it made us really hard to try to do anything with this Galley other than just save the components that are in it.
What did they have for a refrigerator? Did they
it's
have
a
one
very
at all?
tiny one underneath, just forward of that sink. There's a little, I don't remember the brand. I didn't pay attention to that. We just took it out, but it's a very small refrigerator. It was really small.
Okay. And I wish we had a kind of a drawing of the floor plan, but we don't. But directly across from the Galley, going back a couple of images here, behind the bus seat is a shower. Is that right?
Yeah, I was hoping to save the shower. When I first saw it, I thought, there's a lavabo toilet in it. We might be able to save the shower. As you saw in the second picture, we didn't save the shower. It was just caulked together. So I thought it was molded. I was hoping it was molded, but it went with the rest of it. We saved the door.
That can be repurposed, I'm sure.
I'm sure
um,
somebody can use it.
so again, maybe if people are thinking about remodeling their van, maybe they want to get rid of propane, which is kind of a lot of folks are leaning that direction. It's kind of an embassy thing for sure.
Yeah.
So again, thinking about the Galley, this gal did have a 2 burner propane
Yes.
in the Galley. That's something that you could probably readily tackle, and you'd be in favor of ridding the vehicle of propane, not necessarily putting it in. Would that be a fair assumption?
This particular vehicle was very, very easy to rid of propane because the propane
Wait,
tank was under the sink.
wait till you guys
That's
see this.
about the most not allowed thing you could ever do to a van is put a barbecue tank inside the vehicle under the sink, a foot and a half away from the burner flame. You
Yeah,
might
just in
as
case
well
there's a leak,
just,
right?
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you'll show that in a
Um,
picture. When you show the water below, you'll see the propane tank under the sink. You can't even do
yeah,
that in a trailer, well, less a motorized
it,
vehicle.
so we get some fun comments here. So Nancy has a little. Is this the Van Gogh, the horror story? It could be kind of a horror story, right? Um, but the
Well,
purpose again is not really is just to educate. You know, what are you looking for in a used rig? What would you want to change? What's feasible? Um, but this was kind of a Van Gogh horror story, right, Terry?
yeah, and Nancy knows it much too well. The beauty is, what we're teaching Nancy and everybody here today is, not everybody knows what we know. Scott doesn't know what we know. When you go shopping, what we're trying to teach today is to help educate, to help you make decisions on things maybe a little better. And Scott and I talked earlier, it's like buying a house. There's people flipping houses that make them real pretty, and you see a pretty house, but you got to look in the attics, you got to look in the crawl spaces, you got to look in the closets. I'm good at that too. And look at the meat and potatoes, don't always look at the pretty. And we want to share that with everybody on vans as well. This was a pretty vehicle, but it's like a house flipper. Sometimes it looks pretty, but the depth is maybe not as cared about as it should be.
And that's a good word is caring. I think that's kind of the embassy way. You know, that's care and concern almost first for the client. Terry, Sherry's got a good question here. Then we'll talk about the bedroom. Sherry wants to know, is Project Bear Cub more of a major gut and convert to more embassy style, or can you kind of pick and choose some of the systems? I'll follow up on her question there.
Sherry, we did end up stripping this vehicle down completely because we had to follow the rules. Once you touch something, and when you put it back in, when you're an approved upfitter, you have to do it properly. So this vehicle did get stripped totally down, and it's going to look like a Embassy Traveler when we're done with it. It'll be a completely new vehicle that everything meets and complies with RVIA, FMVSS, Ford QVM, Transport Canada, and all the other things we comply to. So yes, this will not look anything like the pictures you're seeing right now when we're done with it. It'll look like a brand new Embassy rolling off the assembly line, and it's pulling on the assembly line very soon and going to run the line with the new vehicles. That's how it's going to be built.
So you do the demo, then you roll onto the regular line.
Yeah,
In this case, right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
It'll get built just like any other vehicle we build.
that's so cool. A couple more good questions coming up, but let's talk about the bedroom. This is always a very important and can be very flexible space in a Class B RV. Um, let's talk about the bedroom in this van. And from my first blush at the picture, it doesn't look too bad, Terry. Although those cushions are a little questionable in terms of comfort.
Yeah, but there
But
is a
what kind of
Murphy.
things? Yep.
Yeah, there's a Murphy bed up above, so it will fold down, and you can take advantage of the Murphy bed. So, it it can serve its purpose. If we're not going to pick too heavily on that, the space was decent. It's open when you want it open and things. And this is part of the nice looking part. This would appeal to a lot of folks, and you know that part of it was a decent looking vehicle. If you're looking for the wood look and want that sort of thing, it was functional.
Yeah, and there's garage storage, which I'm a huge fan of. A lot of the folks here are, so that's pretty cool with the Murphy bed. Um, Let me. So Nancy's got a little more chime in here for us. Terry says, Terry, thanks for accepting Van Gogh into Project Bear Cub. You guys are awesome.
As you all
Is,
know, Nancy owns this van by now.
Yeah, she's a
And
launch customer
bless
for
her heart,
Project Bear
she's
Cub.
a wonderful person that, we're going to take really good care of.
That's so great. Thank you for that. So Photostuff's got a question on the pull test. The Duo Traveler, has that been pull tested?
The pull testing, we're still going round and round with the engineers, but we have got to the final stage of where we're putting the parts in the body in white just pulled back in the building today, as a matter of fact, and we're starting to assemble all the parts in it, and we will be pulling in February, and we will have the testing approved and done by March 1. And part of it was we're pulling several scenarios. We're not just pulling the sofas we're doing now. We're trying to think out of the box and pull what we may be doing in the future too. So that was a little bit of the delay of it is, when we destroy this body in white, you want to only do it once, and we're going to pull several locations in it to get several things done. And then we're going to be pulling some of the stuff we're going to be doing in the B plus as well right after that.
So amazing, kind of future casting needs, which is a pretty smart business.
Yeah, you got to think ahead of what you may do 2 years from now as well while you're doing this, so you can take advantage of it.
So Terry, when you read this comment, you'll no crack donuts, no.
I know, Bob, it's horrible.
So great. Let's move on to this. I'm just going to show the topic. You can kind of talk through what your thoughts are here, Terry, on the bathroom. So I'm kind of sticking to the bathroom, the toilet in particular, and maybe the shower. So this van did have a shower. What's your thinking around remodeling vans or updating systems around bathroom fixture? So if somebody doesn't want a black tank and they want to put it in the Lavio, which you're just loving these days, and the customers, what are your thoughts on bathroom remodeling in a van?
Well, actually, this vehicle had a Lavio dry flush in it, and it will have when we're done, and it'll be mounted the way we do our Traveler in that bathroom with the flip lid and the mirror behind it and all those things. So, that was one of the things we're able to reuse. And there's, as you know, we love the Lavio dry flush toilet. So the bathroom will go from where you have to pull the toilet out of the shower to use the shower to where it'll be a more normal setup.
That makes sense. Would you want to install a black tank system? A little tongue cheek here.
No. I won't. Let's say, do I want to? I'll say I won't.
So if I want a new, fresh black tank, you'll be like, no, we're going to replace it with something else.
I've been there, Scott. I've had to tear them out. I'm not doing it again.
I thought you got hazard pay for that.
Dumping a black tank is one thing. Try to tear one out of a van that the valves don't work anymore and there's stuff in it after 4 or 5 months. Your crew won't sign up for that job. Let me just tell you that. The VP of the company has to take on that project because nobody else will do it. And I don't want to ever do it again.
Yeah, what is your charge for that? More than most people want.
You can't buy long enough gloves. You have to get the kind of farmers use to check the cows out is what you got to do.
Break test the cows. That's a visual. We RVers, we spend a lot of time talking about toilets. I don't know. It's kind of funny. It's real. So we got a good question here from John Huff. In some cases, a total gut and rebuild may be more advantageous to the customer than just a renovation. So, maybe doing some new cushions or something like that. So tell us, Terry, about the process. You talked about this with Nancy. Kind of started on one thing, and then as you got into it, it turned out to be a much bigger gut rehab, really kind of down to the studs in the house situation. What does that look like, and how does that process kind of unroll?
I knew we were going to get the vehicle from the pictures, and Nancy and I talked about that. We knew that. I didn't know it was going to be as tough as it was because they liquid nailed everything to the metal of the van. I've never seen that before. We do dabs. Remember when we talk, we do dabs of the urethane caulk for vibration purposes, and we do pieces of VHB tape and stuff, and we bond our Diabond panels to the metal of the van. But you can take a little flat bar and smack it and cut that, and it's easier than taking out a screw, but it'll never let loose. These son of a guns liquid nailed everything into this. We had to buy special tools just to get it out without hurting the vehicle. And it took us 3 times as long to gut this as what it should have, just because of the way they put it together. And what I'll add to that, Scott, is if this would ever gotten an accident, they couldn't have fixed it because they couldn't do what we do. You have to think about that. Remember, we try to think ahead, and we think about service, we think about serviceability. I've had to take a passenger side wall system and all my cabinets out because a tree fell on top of a Sprinter van in a storm, and the insurance company didn't total the vehicle. I was able to do that very easily because of the way we build. This one would not have been able to be done because they liquid nailed wood to all the body parts that need to be fixed, and a body shop wouldn't have known how to do it. They wouldn't have done it. So think about that too, that that stuff really matters.
Construction methods, construction materials.
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting pictures coming up.
And I wanted to share with you, you and I talked a little bit about this early on. Believe it or not, it takes weeks to build a van like this. It normally, with 2 guys, will take us 4 hours to gut one. This one was more like 12 hours for 2 guys to do that because of the liquid nail. But when you think about that, it's like, oh my gosh, but it takes so long to build. It doesn't take long to unbuild normally.
This one took longer than it should.
Yes.
So this is a good segue. Agnes wants to know, hi, what are some of the red flags when removing someone else's DIY in order to rebuild, or like you just explained? What are some red flags? And it kind of brings up our next topic, which is power electricity. Yes. So
yes. Number one, you have to address safety. Safety comes from FM, VSS, RBI, and Ford QVM. When you're Ford or Sprinter, they have the same programs that we talk to them on. Dodge has programs that they inspect us. So you first look at wiring. You want to look at the GVWR. Is the vehicle going to give you room to carry the things you want to carry? In Nancy's case, she had to weigh this vehicle to get a plate for it. Knew it was pretty heavy at that point. But wiring is a big thing because wiring's the blood of the vehicle. And if LP's in there, LP has to be safe. You have to have it done a certain way. But wiring, if it's done wrong, can be a real problem. I share this with people even when they come talk to us at the shop. You see cars that burn down at the edge of the road that a kid's put a stereo in. It's because he didn't use a fuse, and he used a real heavy cable and hooked it to the battery. Something went wrong. The fuse is what stops bad things from happening. And in this vehicle's case, they connected a huge cable to the factory battery, drilled a hole, and we'll show those pictures to you, ran it through a pedestal without any grommet, and didn't put a fuse on it. That's just painful. And so I want to teach you what to look for. Look for the wiring. What did they do? Where did they connect it? How did they fuse it? The rule is within 18 inches of a connection to a battery, there needs to be a fuse breaker or something that can protect that cable from harm if something happens to it. That's the rule. Some of the cables were 36 inches from a fuse in this, but the front cable connected to the factory batteries, there was no fuse.
So let's kind of show some of that, because the power thing, as Terry has explained this to me, this was a serious hazard. So this first image doesn't look too bad. Terry can maybe tell us what we're looking at here.
These are the lithium batteries. Ones. These are battle-born batteries. They are not UL listed. They should not have been inside. They should have been under the vehicle. But these are connected decent, and the connections are all tight when I tested them. The very front one up at the very far end of the screen, up at the top there, runs under the inverter. You see the fan on there, and it runs to a fuse. It was 36 inches from that fuse, not 18. That's wrong. That's not allowed. Those batteries are not UL listed, therefore they should not have been inside the vehicle. They should have been mounted underneath the vehicle. So that was wrong. It's not that they're bad batteries. Now, in this case, these batteries were at 0 volts, and Nancy and I thought they were no good. When they were in the van, I couldn't get any voltage out of them. The minute I pulled them out and put them on the bench, and I don't even know if Nancy knows this yet, she's going to learn it right now. I had to go online and see, how do you wake up a battle-born battery? Because I've never had to do that before. And it says hook another battery to it, put some juice to it, it'll wake up. But you got to do that within 5 days of it going dead. Well, we knew this was much longer than this. I didn't think I was going to save these batteries. The good news was it was such a bad wiring job. The batteries said, I'm not giving you any power, and they shut down on their own and saved themselves. I was able to wake up every one of these batteries. And there's 5 of them in there. I thought 4 by looking at this because they're stacked. We found another one hid up underneath another cabinet. There was 5. That's a big investment on batteries. And luckily, they were so bad at how they wired it, they work. They just didn't work in the van.
Let's look at this picture, Terry. This one is pretty dramatic, but it looks like what's kind of under my car hood, the van hood. So help us understand what we're looking at here. Again, kind of back to red flags.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here?
So if you slide a driver's seat forward, you can see this spot behind the driver's seat. I took the driver's seat off. It's actually sitting back behind the pedestal. That's the driver pedestal where the batteries are on a Ford Transit. That's the wire I'm talking about, the big red wire right there running up, and it's connected to the positive lug on the right side of the lug right there. There's no fuse. There's no fuse. And then when you show another picture, Scott, you'll show where that cable goes through the pedestal. On the right there at the bottom, they sheared the metal and bent it back and ran the cable through that hole with no protection on that cable with no fuse. You're not allowed to drill a hole in the pedestal, first of all. There's a hole right above it. You didn't have to. It was already there. But there's no grommet on that. There's no snakeskin on that. Any cable we run below the floor, and hers will have that done to it, gets 2 layers of snakeskin in case a stick or something kicks up so it won't gouge that cable, but it's fused. So we overprotect. This one was not protected.
So again, back to red flags.
There on the upper left is the inverter, and those are her 120 volt wires running in and out of the inverter that have no grommet on them, and you can actually see the metal of the inverter was wearing into the sheeting on the Romex wire. The fun thing about this is one of those wires goes to the 30 amp inlet. Scott, it's a 30 amp inlet. It's got a 12 gauge wire on it. 12 gauge isn't rated for 30 amps.
So back to red flags. It's kind of, some of these are obvious to people that are used to this stuff. To me, I would probably notice that a wire, the red one there going through a hole that's cut in metal, is probably not a great thing. So as you kind of look through your rig, whether it's a DIY or maybe it's a used one, these are the kind of the things to look for and bring to Terry and the team's attention. And this becomes part of the conversation of your renovation. We've done a couple of polls on Go Small, Live Large in the last 4, 5, 6 months on what kind of things would you want to update on your van. And technology was probably one of the big ones. And I'll call it power, whether it's solar or lithium or combination of, was always in the top 2. And this would be a good reason to give Terry and the team a call to talk through what this looks like. Terry, this is another one, and we've got some questions we'll answer for you. I just want to get to the power because this one, the average Joe kind of looks at that. It's like, well, it doesn't look that bad. But look at this one, boys and girls. This one made my skin crawl. Terry, where are we on the vehicle, and what are we looking at here?
That's underneath the vehicle by the fuel tank, and it's the wiring. Honestly, I haven't quite figured out what is being ran by that wire yet. I will do that here shortly when I get it on the lift and I get to crawl under it a little better. But that's aftermarket wiring done by an upfitter under the vehicle.
So not necessarily well managed or adhered to. And if you look on the left side of the screen, you'd mentioned snakeskin for something that a wiring goes into that. That's
That's
kind of what we're looking at there. The snakeskin, is that
the
fair?
snake-skinned wires are the factory wires. That's done properly. They're
That's what
secured.
we're looking there
My
now.
rule is if a wire wiggles, it breaks. If a wire wiggles, something's going to find it and break it if it doesn't break. So you want to secure it. You want to wrap it with snakeskin. Snakeskin is designed to protect wires from abrasive natures. We doubled the snakeskin just to make it double protected. And you want to have enough ties and clamps on it that it can't wiggle. If it can't wiggle, you won't have a problem. So
And
that you
vans
look,
wiggle a
crawl under
lot,
the vehicle and look.
right? One more power picture here. This is inside the van. Terry, again, this looks messy, but to the common eye like I have, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. So kind of describe there I see blue and red that would indicate water. But other than this, what are we looking at? And why is this kind of a problem that you would never see unless you pulled all the paneling off?
Well, the water lines are running over the ceiling inside the foamed insulation with the electrical lines, and you don't do that. One, we don't run wires behind anything in our walls. You'll see that they're running behind the beams and behind pieces of wood. If you look off to the right there a little bit, you'll see wires running behind that piece of wood. And where's the screw hole at? It's right where the wire is. So when you don't run wires behind the walls and you screw something in, you can't hit a wire. So this is a perfect example of why I teach, why we do things a certain way is, you're running production, your guys are working, they're trying to go at a pretty good pace, just to do what they do. And they're not thinking about what's behind the wall. They're thinking about fastening that part in. The guy that wired it isn't the guy screwing the panel on that wall. He's not going to remember they put a wire back there. He just knows he has to screw it in. When you put it behind the wall, you're asking for trouble. Don't put it there. So pay attention to that, because wiring is a big part of any RV. And if there's a screw in it, one, you're supposed to high pot test your vans. And a high pot tester, even if that wire just nicked the wire and the screw wasn't touching it, it makes it arc across and it tells you got a problem, even though it's not a problem yet. And that's an RVIA rule. A high pot tester is 1,000 volts but no amps, but it'll arc and jump. And it'll set off an alarm and say you got a problem. And that's an RVIA rule.
And I think it's, we're seeing some kind of scary stuff here, and it's not meant to scare anybody. It's education, as Terry mentions. But there's also a reason why I get asked all the time, I'm sure Terry does too, why are van RVs so expensive? That's because you're putting all the components of a house inside of a steel can that moves around a lot. And this is just a good example, I think, of why, done correctly, some of these vans are at the price points they are. Some are a little inflated for sure, and there's a lot that goes into this. It's water, it's waste, it's propane maybe, it's high voltage equipment, and it all has to be done right, or you're driving around in a hazard zone. And when I saw these, I'm just like, holy cow, right?
And Scott, no way are we picking on the consumer, the buyer, the person that's wanting to hit the road. We're actually wanting to do the opposite here. And we really don't want to pick on anyone doing this. We want to use things that we learned to everyone's advantage and hopefully help, people go on the road safely and do what they want to do and have fun with their vehicle and do everything they sought out to buy the vehicle for. And that's what really we wanted to do today, is use this time and our knowledge and our visibility and your ability to touch people, across this whole country, and say, let's just slow down a little bit, and we're going to try to help you get out the magnifying glass, take a flashlight with you, and look deep. And you'll have some fun doing it. If you need to take someone with you that knows this stuff, pay them $100, $200, and take them with you. It's money well spent.
Yeah, for sure. A couple good questions, Terry, and we've got about another 20 minutes to go. So get the questions rolling in. We've got a few more images and stuff to show you here. So Paige has a question. Since Embassy is all about controlled custom, do some of these DIYs that you're fixing turn out to look like Embassy interiors that we are familiar with?
This one will look exactly like the Embassy vehicles you're familiar with. It will be an Embassy Traveler, completely done like we would take a brand new vehicle and build it up on. We're going to cut the windows in and put them in. It will be an Embassy Traveler when we're done, completely restored and 100% like it just rolled off the new factory floor.
And you're gonna have some amazing before and after pictures. That's so great. Nancy's gonna be super excited. Yeah, Nancy, again, it's not we're not supposed to know these things as
Nancy,
consumers necessarily. This is just education. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Nancy, you're not expected to know, and that's why I say bless your heart. We found each other for a reason, and I believe in that. The good Lord points us in the right way, in our life if we really pay attention. And we are going to take good care of you. And there's a reason you called me that day and we talked and stuff. And you're going to be able to travel and know that you've got a great vehicle that you get to travel with.
And because of that, they set up a whole series of actions that now this is being offered to folks in similar or maybe in very different situations. But Terry made something. I wanted to show this. I'm not sure if they're in the audience. I haven't seen them yet. But this is a card. If you can read what it says, it's got Route 66 on it. I can't read it backwards. Faith is taking the first step when you can't
taking
even
your first step even when you can't see the whole staircase.
So that's Nancy making that call. And you ready for who this came from? It's kind of hard to read. I show this on my What's Up Wednesday. This is Frank and Sharon. They're waiting for their embassy. And it's just sharing amongst ourselves that gets me excited. I'm going to start crying if I keep going down this path too far. But it's this kind of stuff that I am so serious about, and Terry is so serious about, because together we're changing lives. We're bringing information to the table. And if you've got a dream, we want to help your dream come true in whatever manner we can. And so thank you, Frank and Sharon, again, for sending that Christmas card. It was so cool. I get these, not cards, but emails. And so anyway, I'm going to get choked up. Kathmandu's got a good question. I thought, because they have an embassy. So let's see. Kathmandu says, thanks for offering the service. Is there an approximate minimum price point, or it's economically viable to kick off such a project? That's a beautiful question.
We understand you've got a good investment going in right out of the gate. So we take each one of these and evaluate them individually. Every one of them is going to be different. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to charge this and remodel everybody's vehicle. They're built by different people. They're built by different companies. They're built by whoever worked on the vehicle. So, some of them will say no to, but in the cases where, we can really, really help you, we're going to do our best to do the best job we can for you and not make it any more painful than it has to be, I guess is the easiest way to put it. There's people that's gotten with me for different things that we won't necessarily do, but we'll point you in the right direction and steer you to somebody that's good at doing it, for instance, and try to help you in that way. So, if you want a Lithionics battery, for instance, and that's all you need, we get with Lithionics and we say, who's the specialist in this area to install that battery for you? It may not be us, but it'd be somebody Lithionics says is the right person for that project. So sometimes it's just the right phone call to vendors that we use and using people that they recommend that they can stand behind and know you get a good job.
Yeah. And it's just, it's kind of a consultation up front, right?
Yes.
Just understand what you're trying to do. What do you have? Send some pictures. Yeah. So let's go a little bit deeper here. So let's talk about the HVAC system.
Yes.
And excuse me, folks. Here we go. HVAC system. This obviously is not in a van. This is a commercial building. But the Terry, what I'm curious about here is we're going to show you, I think, a picture of the rooftop air conditioner. But what I was super curious about was the insulation here. So kind of walk us through what we're looking at. Normally spray foam's not too bad, right? I'll see it in a lot of the ceiling attics in Florida houses.
Well,
but what are we looking at
vehicle, the whole vehicle got spray foam, but some spots are thinner than others. So, what I'm going to share with you on spray foam, and again, it's not one of my favorite things, but we'll deal with it when we have to. Because it has to be lightweight so it doesn't distort the outside of the vehicle, it's really not a great R value, even though you would think when you do that, you'd get really good insulation. it's very lightweight, or it would distort when it gets between the beam and the outer skin. If it had too much expansion, it would look horrible on the outside of the van. So don't let it fool you. We're going to do things for Nancy here that we'll build some. She's not a real tall person, so we're going to build her ceiling down just a little so we can still do our aircraft insulation in here. We're not going to tear all that out, but we're going to insulate on top of that to give the proper insulation, you know what I mean? And just to get that to do what it needs to do.
And insulation just so important. Mason Mike here, frequent, great friend, and says, Scott, are you going to have them remodel your van in the future? The other thing I would really like is insulation, which will require moving everything. So probably not, but insulation is just so important. And when you don't have it, which is my case, you really appreciate what insulation can do. Terry, there's a question here on size, and then Sherry's got a kind of a follow-up to this. So is this particular transit that we're looking at today, is it 20 feet or 22 feet?
22.
22, so the big one. And then Sherry wants to know, are you limiting Project Bear Cub to ProMasters, Transits, Sprinters, and is there a year range? Good question.
Yeah, we can't get too old because, honestly, you get into other things. So I think we did post a year limit that we'd go back to. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I know we made a post of that on our paperwork. We aren't limiting, we build on the ProMaster, the Transit, and the Sprinter, we're one of the few that do all of them. So we're not limiting that. But year range, you have to. Mileage, you kind of have to a little bit. Sometimes you can get into really high mileage. It wouldn't make sense to make that investment. This one was low mileage and it wasn't, I think, a year and a half old or something like that, and that's fine. So yeah, there are some limits to that.
Yeah. Try remodeling old people like me and Terry. Make us into 25-year-olds again. I'll sign up for that program. Jeez. We'd all be millionaires if we could figure that out. Terry, there's one more image here we want to share on the AC. I think this one's really interesting. I didn't quite get the one on the right. So let me bring that up. So maybe walk us both through these. One's on the inside, one's on the outside, the more horizontal.
So we're looking at the roof on the right, and that's the air conditioner foam seal that we've zoomed in on. And all the roofs have ribs up there. Some of them go down, some of them go up. In the Transit, it goes down. When we put an air conditioner or a vent up on a roof, we actually build the roof up with a composite material and seal it to the roof, and then we bed liner spray over top of it, and we take away the ribs completely from the mount point. So the foam seal sets on a flat surface, and no roof is flat surface. So it's something I created many years ago. This one is sucked down to the ribs with just the foam seal, and that's a really tough thing long term to keep the water out with. So I was just trying to show hardly anybody does what I do in that aspect. The whole industry kind of does that, but I believe it's wrong because you have to make the water go where it wants to go, that kind of thing. It's like in a house. Your shingles are designed in a way to make the water flow off the roof. Well, a van isn't much different from that. Again, we'll use that house terminology. Your job is to make sure the water can't find its way in. And I go the extra mile to build the roof up and make sure it can't find its way in.
This is why I love Embassy RV. Work with you guys. I learned so much. Every one of these, it's so amazing. We're going to talk about water here in just a minute. We've got about 10, maybe 15 minutes if we go over, Terry. We know it's Friday afternoon there in 13-degree Elkhart, but we got some good questions. Terry, We're going to kind of answer your question. You mentioned B+. I think he's talking about Project Bear, Black Bear, which is the a very different van. This service is only limited to vans, Class B vans, right?
I think, Scott, aren't we going to have another meeting here soon with our groups? But basically from the open forum meetings that we've had with you and future clients and current clients, we do have a drawing now that will be released here pretty soon to you and to the group that is approved and going into production. And it has all the features in it that were talked and needed and shared with this. So we're really excited about being able to release a vehicle that, customers had a big input on how we're going to do this.
Yeah, kind of crowdsourcing on RV features. We had a number of workshops with some of the group here today, and Project Black Bear is what is been affectionately called. There's a little bit on Embassy site. There's a little bit more on mine, and you can go to my site, gosmalllivelarge.com, click on the Embassy under more, my partner page there, and there's a form to fill out. We're still actively collecting and vetting folks for that. As Terry mentioned, it's getting really close to showing some floor plans, which is going to be really exciting. I'm just honored to be part of this. Some couple quick questions. We still have water waste to go through, and what's the one down here? We didn't want to miss this one. Oh my gosh, the materials. So let's talk about this. So this is a little off topic, Deborah, but I'm not familiar with this. Recently heard complaints about Lavio. Embassy customers still happy with their Lavio dry flush toilets, which there's no water, no black tank.
Yeah. Again, everything has a negative that's made. People aren't perfect that create all this stuff. And I believe everything actually has a negative to it. What we try to do is get around the negative and find a positive. So the Lavio's negative is if you urinate in it and it twists and spins, and sometimes some of the urine will want to find its way out through the top. But by simply adding kitty litter, or I just found a new product today working with the customer actually that's really cool. But basically you just put 2 tablespoons of a product in that absorbs the urine, and then you hit the flush and it gets rid of the negative. So the few negatives you can find, the other one is, okay, you get 17 flushes and you're going to put a new bag in. Well, we can do the absorbing material and get more flushes while you urinate and buy time. But some customers have gone out and found bags, like camping bags that go in the toilet, and you can go all the way to Alaska and back and not run out of bags. And so again, there's just really neat ways to make that toilet do everything you want to do and never touch any black water, anything that's not fun to mess with.
Not fun to mess with. I want to see it once going down and not again, and that kind of solves that.
Yes.
So I am happy to say Frank and Sharon, we shared my card earlier, are in the house, and they're saying hello to all the Embassy folks from Albany, Oregon. So thank you, Frank and Sharon, again, whom I've actually met in person in Oregon there in the Bass Pro Shops. Just a delightful
couple. That's a good place to meet, Scott.
It is. That's where we're doing a lot of roundups now, because they have huge parking lots. They're close to the freeway, and there's just cool stuff inside, I have to admit. So thank you, Frank and Sharon, for sending that card and just being part of this. Linda's got a question. Can Embassy install a pizza oven shelf over the cab, specifically the Transit, as an option if there isn't one now? And are they installing the installation? I'm not sure.
Yeah. That's something that the customers do a little bit. They do cargo nets and things there. You have to understand, and I know people are doing that, but again, it comes back to airbags, and there's so many things going on in that front headliner that if you run screws in a certain area and the airbag blows up and it gets popped by something you're doing, there's a lot of things going on in that front headliner. So I stay away from it, but there's ways that you can do things and add cargo net kind of storage like what's behind me. And I think Bob and Deb Scott did some of that to theirs and they really like it. So that's the DIY part of what's so fun. The Embassy owners and wannabes talk to each other and share ideas and things that they're doing and help each other out. And I think that's what's so great about this is, we have such a great group of people that are building and just liking traveling together and doing things together. So there's a lot of help from Embassy owners out there to help you with some of these questions.
Which is all about the community. It's really a family community, and it's just really passionate. And just thanks to everybody, Sherry and Robert and some others that run that Facebook group. I know it means a lot to Terry and allows you to chat amongst yourselves. So it's kind of organic, which I think is super cool. Even in this chat string today, my What's Up Wednesday shows, There's just a really great building community being built. Let's talk about water, Terry. We've got just a few minutes left. I don't want to miss any of this. Water is so important in an RV experience. So here's my topic call out. And so this is their freshwater system, which, again, at the unknowing eye of what I might have, what am I looking at here, and why could this be better? And how
Well,
would maybe Embassy approach this?
it isn't that it's bad. It took up storage. There wasn't a lot of storage in this vehicle, even though you saw those elevated bed things. There just wasn't a lot left because batteries are on one side and the water tank's on the other. So it takes up storage. The green and white hose is a compliant hose for a water fill for an RV tank for fresh water. But you have to pull it out of there and put a garden hose on it and fill it and then tuck it back in there. Just a little cumbersome to do. But it was decent amount of water, and it is inside, so it still gave you the ability to use it when it's cold outside. So, it wasn't horrible. It was doable.
So let's talk about waste. Here's my visual on that. That would be a water reclamation factory. I'm not sure what they're reclaiming, but this is under the galley sink, I think you mentioned, Terry. And what are we looking at here?
That's the LP tank in the background for the 2-burner stove. It's just not allowed to be inside. The blue tank in the front is the gray water tank for the sink. But I would have to believe with Nancy that if, like Scott said earlier, if you hit the brakes, even with the half tank, it's probably going to find its way to the floor. So you'd have to dump it every time you used it to keep it from splashing around and getting on the floor. There's a cap for it. So maybe you pull the hose out of it when you're driving and put the cap on it, and it keeps it from splashing. But it's just a little different.
That's a nice way of saying. Yeah, that's interesting to me. The next one is windows, and that van I don't think had windows in it, Terry, but I think I heard you say you're putting windows in. So again, maybe if somebody wants to get rid of the glass windows, put in acrylic awning style windows. Windows are on the table for a renovation.
Yeah. We definitely have windows ordered for Nancy that look just like the factory windows that are made in the Netherlands. So she'll have some nice factory looking windows and a panoramic view and shades and everything going in to give her a really nice view from the inside out. The only windows that were in the vehicle when it came here are the slider door windows and the rear door windows. So that'll be one of the biggest changes in this vehicle, bar none, is just the visibility when you're inside and see the beautiful things you're going to see on the outside.
Yeah, it's when I see vans without windows, I kind of like, you're kind of missing half of the, anyway. Short on time. Let's see, a couple more good questions. Terry, maybe just talk about storage real fast. What kind of options might, again, if we're thinking, maybe taking out some of the wood cabinetry and putting in embassy style cabinetry. A lot of people can increase their storage using embassy methods, right?
Yeah, I get asked every once in a while about doing a mid-roof transit van, not the high roof. And I get it that, it's a little shorter and you feel like it might drive a little better. Maybe you feel like the wind wouldn't rock it around a little bit. But the minute you do it, you lose all that overhead storage that's just so valuable to you. And, just the headroom and the feel of the open space. And it's a myth that a high roof's going to blow the vehicle off the road. That doesn't happen anymore. Will it move it a little and rock it a little in a 30, 40 mile an hour wind? Yeah, but it's not going to do like the old vans did where you go through a wooded area on the turnpike and you get into an open field and you literally have to lean into it or you're in the next lane. That doesn't happen.
We got some great questions. We'll end with those here in just a few minutes. Terry, you okay to go another 5-7 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about material. I think this is one of the things I just find so impressive about Embassy RV. They have a very different approach. No wood in an Embassy RV, Class B van, and your use of marine components is really, really prevalent. Speaking of wood, this had a lot of wood in it. Maybe just kind of talk us through this picture and how it affects the gross vehicle weight, GVWR is that what we call it, and why is that important?
Yeah, I mean, it had a very wonderful smell. It's cedar, so cedar, is just a beautiful smell, and it does, it's a rustic kind of cool look. I used to build decorative cedar walls when I was young, building houses in Florida. I kind of specialized into making artwork out of tongue and groove cedar, so I really like the product, but it's 3/4 inch thick, and it's just too heavy for a van. You know, that's where the beauty stops. Is you have to look at the functionality of it in your van, and weight is something we battle diligently and try to give you the absolute most carrying capacity of any vehicle in the B industry. And you do that by aluminum composites and things that don't have a lot of weight to them, but they're structural. So this was very structural, but it also carried a lot of weight with it, which made it not so feasible.
And this next one is of the floor, I believe. There's two images here. The big one, there's a kind of an inset.
Yeah.
Your approach to floors are very different. What are we looking at here, and what's really the nasty part of this on the left side we're looking at?
Well, I actually thought I was going to see a million screws through the floor. I knew when I saw the seat out of it and I saw the 1/2 inch plywood, the black material down below that wood there. So this had 1/2 inch plywood liquid nailed to those wood strips you see on the left. And then it had actual authentic hardwood flooring you'd see in an old house on top of the 1/2 inch plywood, which made it way too heavy. It was really nice looking, but it just doesn't belong in a van. It probably would have lasted a long time on the surface. But if you look on the picture to the left, you see the lighter colored wood strips in the center that were liquid nailed down. The ones that are gray on the left were actually wet and already rotting. Uh, when you put the wood under the floor and the water gets under to it, there's no way to get it out again. It stays in it until it rots it, and that's what happened to the boards on the left. And you see a lot of splinters there on the floor. It was falling apart as we were trying to take it out. So that will be gone, and it'll be a composite subfloor. We will touch up anything that's scratched so it can't rust, and primer it with zinc primer, which is the rule. And when we put our composite subfloor, there'll be no fasteners, and it'll never ever, even if it gets wet, nothing happens.
That's so cool. I just, again, if you've kind of been through a house renovation and you've seen what's behind the studs, it just really brings all this to the forefront. And we're going through one right now in our new Airbnb property, and it's horrifying to see what people have done, taking the cheap way out. And
Yeah.
again, if you're kind of looking for ways to modernize, to upgrade, to maybe a gut rehab on your van, there's some good chassis out there, but sometimes the components, that's what we're seeing this today.
Yeah.
Terry, got two kind of interesting questions.
Sure.
Deborah says, excited about Black Bear. That's cool.
Yep.
Which is the class, the C, right? But David has a question here. This is kind of important. So any thoughts about offering suspension upgrades, like advanced RV uses? So maybe the interior, but maybe some exterior needs some help too. What are your thoughts on that? Good question.
Well, this comes back to approvals. Being a Ford QVM top tier builder, and Ford absolutely adores what we do to these vehicles, and actually adores what we don't do to these vehicles by following all the rules and then some. Ford has put their foot down and said, when this vehicle leaves our facility, it will be Ford's. You can do an upgrade, you can do the interior, but you will not touch the tires, you will not touch the rims, and you will not touch the suspension. You will not touch electrical. We tie into points that Ford gives the upfitters to tie into. You don't go beyond that. So that's again where we have spent a lot of money, time, and effort in hiring a guru for FMVSS. It's what he lives and breathes. That's all he does is FMVSS safety rules. We called Ford in here, and the head Ford engineer come in and inspected us, and now the other engineers coming in. Now every engineer's been to our shop and just in love with what we're doing. But part of it is what I want to teach is sometimes it's what you shouldn't do as well. It's not always what you're doing. There's a lot of rules of what you shouldn't do, and you have to know what those rules are to be compliant.
It's the art of no. And Steve Jobs said it really
Yeah,
best. It's really hard to say no. It's easy to say yes to a
yeah.
lot of things. So,
And Scott, what
um,
we're teaching today is we don't expect you to know those rules. We've spent years and decades and a good part of my life learning all this because it's what I've lived and breathed. You know, folks that are doing bed and breakfast like you, that's what you do, what you teach people, that's what you do. Other people are IT people and things. They aren't expected to know this, but that's kind of what we want to teach is there's ways, just like when you buy a house, sometimes you'll take somebody with you that knows how to look deeper and is going to assist you in that purchase or non-purchase in many cases. you know these vans are exactly like a house. Treat it the same way. Take somebody that knows with you to help you make a good decision because it'll save you a lot of grief in the long run.
so great. That's so true. And it is a tiny house on wheels.
Yes, it is.
Somebody said it really great. It's a, I'm going to misquote it, so I won't say it, but it was really cute.
Yeah,
I have T-shirts made.
but
One tactical question.
a lot of the rules cross-reference between a house and a van. Wiring
For sure.
sizes are wiring sizes. If you're going 20 amp on a breaker, you're using 12 gauge wire, not 14. If you're doing, water lines and they're under a certain amount of pressure, you better use a certain kind of plumbing, and so it's got similar rules. Structure is structure. It's just some of the rules are the math, and we all have to follow it.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important. Science is there for a reason. Let's see. We have a
Yes.
super tactical question, and then we want to close out with a specific question to you, Terry. Where is it? They're jumping around. So Alan wants to know anything new to report in regards to the shower holding tank volume.
Yes, it's one of Brandon's top priorities. I believe we have drawings off to the vacuum form mold makers. That is the tank we're building around the spare tire to increase the volume. And, this is something, again, that I think we will be doing that's a little different from everybody else's. Vehicles that we've already built are able to be retrofitted. There may be a small fee, but we're going to be very, very aware of that and try to, I don't want to feel like anyone's left behind as we increase our knowledge and increase the things we do. It's kind of like the Project Bear Cub. We also don't want to leave any of our clients behind either. We want to be able to, if they want it, it'll be available to them.
Yeah, so important. We're getting some really positive comments. So Deborah, so many people watching. Yeah, we had over 100. So give a thumb up for Terry Friday afternoon, helping educate us. Now I know a little bit more what to look for in a used van, maybe in the van you have now, certainly the van you might want to get, right? And if you want to do some remodeling, some updating, some improvements, you know how to hit up. And Terry, Photo Stuff says, this is the single best interview you ever had with Scott. So you are getting really good at this, sir. So thank you.
Well, Scott and
He's a
I knew
walking
this
YouTube
going
star.
in. You and I talked that we knew we were going to make a difference today, and we're very excited. And Nancy, again, you're going to change so many people's lives from what we're teaching today, and there was a reason for that. We don't always get a chance to slow down and do this, and I think it's important that we help each other out and do things. If the whole world did that, my goodness, what a great place.
Yeah, instead of, yeah, some things going on. Terry, let's end with this. So if somebody's curious, they want more information, they want to have sense of pictures, what are some next steps people would want to go through that are intentional and kind of methodical? What you have something on your website, I think, is that correct? And Wanda, tell us about that. Next steps.
Yeah, we have a new IT group taking care of the website. So when you send it in, there will be a robotic kind of thing asking you questions that in email addresses and things, and then it comes to Wanda and I, and one of us will reply right away. Usually Wanda will take it first unless there's a technical question, then it'll come to me. So you'll just reach out to us through our website, embassyRV.com, and we'll get back with you. And then, like we did with Nancy, we'll request photos, and I'll look at all the photos personally, and I'll sit down with my team, and we'll go over them, and then I'll reach back with you, and we'll talk about it.
Keeping it simple. I love it. It's so great. Well, folks, we have come to the end of our time. Terry, again, thank you for everything you do for the community and for your customers and for this audience. You're just the most amazing guy. And clearly you are doing what you love, because it comes through on every one of these. And in these exclusive YouTube lives, we just love this. We're still talking about getting Scott going ice fishing. We were talking about that. Apparently the ice is still good in early March, so it may happen.
I was just reminding Scott before we got on, the ice is building. I heard one lake has 4 inches of ice on it already. 6 degrees builds ice fast. If you've never been on a frozen lake with 10 inches ice on it and the ice is building in 6 degrees, there's actually little earthquakes, and the ice cracks sometimes right under your feet because it's growing. It has to crack to grow. And if you've never felt it before, sometimes there's a little happy dance going on.
Should I bring my water wings? I don't know. Am I safer in an Embassy RV when the ice is cracking beneath me? That makes me a little nervous. You should have told me that.
You may hear some higher pitches out of Scott than you're used to.
Oh my God, cold weather and water. Don't. That's not my two go-to things, that's for sure. But Terry, thank you. Say hi to Wanda, excuse me, and the whole team there. Have a great weekend. Happy New Year, everybody! Right?
Yes.
January 7th. It's just
New
crazy already. January 7th. So we'll see you on next What's Up Wednesday. We'll be playing another one of these YouTube lives with Embassy. I think we're going to keep diving into these as they grow out. I think there's just so much education on some of these items. So watch for those announcements. And Terry's not going to be at the Tampa Super Show. I am. We have 2 roundups planned. So if you're going to the Tampa RV show in a couple weeks, Friday the 21st and Saturday the 22nd, you have a chance to meet me if we haven't met in person. I just love those kind of things. So you can see that I'm just as real as Terry sitting there. So the fish above you, though, Terry, they were real at one point, though, right?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I know I won't be able to sneak away because of our move, but I know you'll have a great time down there and have a great time. It's a beautiful place to be at that time of year. There's no doubt.
For sure. All right, Terry, thank you. And thanks to everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate that. Until we see you soon, we always wish you to journey on. See you soon.